So guys, we get the question all the time, what's the next hot franchise? How do I find the next Jimmy John's? How do I find the next big thing? And I mean, it really boils down, in my opinion, down to one thing, and it's going to sound self-serving, I know, so forgive me in advance, but I believe working with an expert franchise advisor is truly the only way to find the next hot franchise brand without getting really lucky. And here's what I mean. I mean, there's 300 new franchise concepts that launch every single year, right? Consider the last 3 years, the emerging franchise brands. You have about 900 brands out there that you're trying to do research on to understand which one's available in your territory, which one has happy franchisees, which one has ROI and everything else. It is almost impossible to do it on your own. We have a full team spending full-time hours doing nothing but identifying what is the next hot brand, the next emerging brand. Because the reality of it is, we usually aren't going to place our clients into Jimmy John's or Planet Fitness or Massage Envy or things like that because they're sold out of the country. So we have to go find those brands that still have open territory, but are showing signs of being a great new franchise brand. So Tyler, what do you think about this?
Well, yeah, I mean, what most people are going to do is two ways they're going to find the next hot franchise. They're going to Google and they're going to find a bunch of ads or a bunch of just random stuff. And they're going to start that conversation maybe with a brand. So those are all paid for ads, or they're going to be on vacation. This happens a lot, right? You're on vacation, they see the next cool thing and they walk in, they're like, oh, this would go great. Enter my town, like X my town. So that happens a lot. That's not how you should make the biggest decision of your life. You would never buy a house just seeing a house somewhere and being like, that's it, let's do it. Like, that shouldn't happen, right? So that's how most people do it. And I just want to go back to that. The aspect of, we work with a lot of very wealthy and very good investors who have done this over and over, and they rely on experts. So to your point, 100%, that's how you should do it.
You said something I just want to touch on quick, the ads. So many people go to Google, they look at the ads, and the reality of those ads is they're paid for ads, right? And so there's not, they don't have the level of validity, or you can't really trust them because they're people that are paying to get placed in good spots and to look good, right?
Well, there's no comparison. I mean, you're going to start talking to one brand. Some people will actually talk to 2 brands or 3 brands. Most of the time, they're going to search next hot franchise concept or what's the best franchise of 23. And then boom, you're going to get sucked into a funnel of some sort.
Yeah. But Colvin, I want to talk to you about your story a little bit because you were part of one of the hottest franchise brands in the last decade, Crumble Cookie. You sold their first, 250 or so franchises. Talk a little bit about your story there. How'd you know that was going to be the next big thing?
Yeah, when I jumped in at first, I really didn't know that it would be, right? I started in early, 13th employee, I believe. But yeah, like you mentioned, first franchise sales development rep. Where we started to realize that it was the next big thing is really when they started to dial in the economics, number one. These were making great money. Franchisees were very, very happy. So people that I was working with were coming back and, hey, can we get more? Can we do 2 or 3 of these, right? So happy franchisees, they're making good money. The support was finally there. The training was there. So all these things were starting to line up for franchisees. And then next thing you know, our social media started to explode. So the marketing was really dialed in. So all those things started to come together and you'd see more and more applications come in. So it was kind of at that point where we knew, hey, this is really, really big. And at that point too, I was like, with my brother, hey, we should probably get into these ourselves, right? Like, we don't want to be that guy that missed the boat on something big like this. So it was at that point too where we wanted to throw our name into the ring, throw our hat into the ring and get into franchising with them ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. And you were one of the lucky ones that got an opportunity to see it early, but most people in America that want to open a Crumble Cookie can't do it.
That's right.
It's sold out or it's going to be a resale of somebody that's having a high level of success and you're paying a big multiple.
That's right.
So this is what we do. We exist to go out and research and find brands that have the characteristics to grow into the next whatever you want to call it. So we look for great leadership. We look for a defensible service or product. We look for strong return on investment. We look for happy franchisees. We can talk to the banks to understand, is this a business that they are willing to lend against? And many other criteria that we look for. And again, I just want to stress it. An individual doing their own research doesn't have access to that information. So for us to reduce the risk for our clients, we go and find the insider information to then transfer that to our clients and say, here are the ones that we believe in.
Yeah, most of the good franchise brands, what we're talking about is retail brick and mortar. Like, how else do you see a franchise? You don't see a van that says X plumbing company and be like, that's a great franchise.
Right.
But those are the best franchises right now. Probably out of the hottest franchises, in my opinion, 80% are home service brands.
Yeah.
Like the boring stuff. you're not going to just see that van and be like, that's my next franchise.
I want that at my house.
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't make sense, right?
Yep.
It's going to go good in my town.
Yep.
Like, okay. So with that said, yeah, the brick and mortars are great because you're going to see them and be like, that's awesome. A lot of those come with a little bit of, things that we don't love, honestly.
Sure.
But I do want to talk to you about Crumble Cookie because you're obviously an advisor here.
Yeah.
You love your job, doing great with it.
Absolutely.
But you're almost fully absentee from.
That's right. Yeah. So when we started, I didn't have $500,000 to invest into one store, let alone 2 or 3, right? So we had to get creative with our partnership. We had to find some operators that had some capital, So we were developing, we were doing the construction side of things, and we didn't want to leave our positions there with Crumble. We wanted to be able to have a piece of all the happiness and all the good things that everyone was talking about. But at this point, we've got great operators. We've got a great relationship with them. They manage the stores day to day. They take care of the hiring. And so for us, we've been able to be semi-absentee, step in when we need to, have those conversations, touching base with them periodically, make sure all is in line. But similar to some of these brands you were talking about that aren't brick and mortar, we have to deal with the real estate and the leases, the boring businesses, right? Where people can get into these, very minimal investment. You don't have to give up your entire life savings to get into these, and you can still be successful.
Yep, that's awesome.
I think just to circle the thought up, I want to finish with one last point. Sometimes it's not just identifying the next big franchise brand, it's how do you put yourself in a position to out leverage the next person that wants it. And here's what I mean. I'm confident we have a brand in our inventory right now that will be the fastest selling franchise this year in the country. And there is tremendous demand for it. But we are a lead provider or a client provider to that franchise many times over. So we have a fantastic relationship with
Right.
them. And so if somebody were to knock on their door on their own and say, I want to be a franchisee, and they're competing with several other people in the market, it's going to be hard to get
Not
attention.
happening, yeah.
If they come in as a Sidekick client and want to get a market that several other people are competing for, that's what we do. We represent them. We put the leverage of Sidekick behind them for that franchisor to give them the pole position in order to get the franchise. So don't just think about it as identifying the next big franchise concept. It's also putting yourself in a position to be awarded that territory.
So I don't think a lot of people know that. So let's go back a little bit. So some of the best brands in the country have an extreme amount of people wanting them, right?
There's a line.
There's a line to get
Yeah.
in front of these brands.
Yep.
And unless you're prepared, both financially, everything's checked off, you're not going to get that franchise.
Yep.
So just so you know, they don't need you as much as maybe you need them. So be clear on that, because I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like, we're talking, they're working with maybe 500 to 1,000 prospective candidates right now looking at this brand.
How do you stand out from the crowd when you're in line? Like, how do they know, right? It's like you're lined up for American Idol. How do they know you're the next big thing until you get inside?
Yep.
Right.
Did you guys have that at Crumble? Did you have to fight for some of your
Yeah. So, I mean, at first, we didn't have a ton of applications coming in. No one knew who we were. But as we started to get more and more locations open, the signs getting up and people seeing the lines outside the door for the grand openings, then you start to pick up some momentum. And then it got to a point where the applications really start to come in. And you're kind of battling between clients, like who makes the most sense here, who makes the most sense there, who's the most prepared, who's going to operate the best. And so you have to really, even within, separate who's going to make the most sense. So
it's why I love this business, because we do the research to find the next big brand. We put our clients in a position to be in first place in order to get their territory, and we do it for free. There is zero cost to our clients because, like a real estate agent, we are paid by the sellers or the franchisors. So, with that, I just think that's why I believe that using an expert franchise advisor is the absolute best way to find the next big franchise concept.